Welcome to the Co-Living Circle podcast. I'm your host and the founder of Co-Living Circle, Paul Burke. We are with Stephen Bond, the CEO and co-founder of Homebase, a co-living startup in Brooklyn. Stephen, thanks for joining me, man.
Well, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate
So,
it.
yeah, of course. I'm excited to hear your story. We talked a little bit beforehand, and we probably could have talked a lot longer than 20 minutes. But let's start off first by talking about Homebase and what it is.
Sure, man. Sure. So, Homebase, it's an affordable, on-demand community housing network for the price-conscious millennial, essentially looking to make their way in a big city.
Awesome. And where are you? Is Homebase operating right now, or are you guys still in pre-development?
We are not operating at the moment. We are shooting to open a location in Brooklyn, New York this winter, but right now we're still in development, essentially stealth mode, essentially.
Awesome. And why did you choose Brooklyn?
Why did we choose Brooklyn? Great
Yep.
question. Great question. So I'm from New York. I'm from Westchester, New York, which is like 45 minutes away from the city, outside of the city. And for me, Brooklyn is a great option because it's not directly in the city, right? It's on the outskirts. And what that allows us to do is get a cheaper price point for the consumer. But on the flip side, from just price and affordability, the area of Brooklyn is very up and coming, is very hip and trendy. There's a lot of great restaurants and eateries in the area. The view is amazing. You literally have the skyline view of the city and you're still in a New York zip code. So there's tons of things to love about Brooklyn. Like I said, it's very up and coming and it's a train ride outside of New York City.
Yep. Tell us a little bit about how Homebase works. We talked a little bit beforehand, but there seems to be similar models, but they're all on the West Coast. I haven't heard anything like what you were talking about with Homebase on the East Coast. Tell us a little bit more about how that works.
Definitely, definitely. So, as I mentioned, Homebase is on-demand housing, and with that, we offer our guests three different living options, right? And we call them the bunk, the base, and the room. And those living options are set in a community facility. Essentially, it's co-living, co-working, and co-wellness. And when we say co-wellness, we've got essentially like a wellness retreat area that we've worked into our model, right? Where massages would be available, day beds and spas and saunas would also be available for use for our guests. The wellness is very important to us. We'll also offer classes, things for your mind, body, and spirit, like yoga, dance, movement, things like that. And then we'll also have a co-working section, which is made up of private and shared space. So there'll be private offices for teams up to 4 people, and there'll also be shared desk space that also trickles into our cafe. And our cafe is also a crucial component as well that kind of ties into our wellness, where we feel that food is essential to diet, health, and wellness. So we actually have somebody on our team that's a Culinary Institute graduate, worked in Michelin kitchens all over New York City, that is running our cafe to help us design grab and go items, mix up bowls, pre-prepared items like Chipotle style, where you go down the line, and helping us develop and build out the cafe aspect on top of the co-living. And the co-living is where you'll find things like the bunk, the base, and the room, which is our 3 different living types that range in square footage. And the whole idea, because these living units are essentially smaller than what you'd normally see, what you're saying, we're a little different than the other competitors in the co-living space, mainly because of this. These are modular units, so we'd be able to actually build them in the space. We'd be able to set them up in the space and be able to cut construction costs and time for us to set up one of these co-living spaces. So those, just to give a little insight, the smallest one's the bunk that starts at 28 square feet. It's a double decker. The next one's called the base, and that's coming in at 53 square feet. It's a little bit bigger. It'll give you some space to move around, but again, it's a smaller room. And the idea here is to spend more time in the community, connecting with other people, and less time in your room. The private space is essential. We feel that, but we don't want you to stay in your room and essentially oust yourself from society. We want you to commingle. That's how the floor plan was designed. and we want you to connect with the other guests in the community. And the room, which is our largest, comes in at 87 square feet. We kind of see this as like going to, right? It's like post-college housing. It's like you can come in at an entry level bunk, and then you can work your way up if you're getting a little bit more money. Because the whole idea is for price conscious millennials to move to a city, to make a life for yourself, right? Whether it's you're an entrepreneur, you're an artist, you're a developer, whatever it is, you've got student loan debt and you're having trouble getting finding housing because you can't get a lease or something like that because you don't have the income requirements to do that. You can't pay security deposit. So you find another solution, and that's us. And we want to be that affordable option that allows people to come and essentially live out their dreams. And that's essentially Homebase in a nutshell.
That's awesome, man. That's a great description of it. I mean, just a crazy stat I heard recently that one major co-living space, about 70% of their residents are transplants. And I think when you bring together a bunch of people from all over the place getting to know a city for the first time, it does make that commingling, I guess, just much more special because everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's trying to figure out what's the best place to get coffee, or who's the best manager if you're, an actor, or there's just so many things that like you benefit from having other people around. So let's talk about you for a little bit, if you don't mind. So your background is you've worked in sports, acting, wellness. Tell me how that got you to this point with Homebase. How did all those things contribute to where you're at now?
100%. So I grew up in Westchester, New York. Like I said, I think timeline is just important. My father's an entrepreneur. My mom's an actor, artist. I'm kind of the hybrid in between. I studied marketing and business at Fordham University in the Bronx, graduated in 2015. After that, I joined the family business, which is where I got into sports and travel. My dad's had a travel agency for the last 30 years, and it's small family business. And I'm getting to the end of school, and I needed a job. So I'm thinking, what should I do? And who do I turn to? I turned to Pops, and I asked him if I'd be able to join. And, he kind of shrugged me off at first, but eventually he took it seriously. And I've been working with them ever since 2015. We took the small business and we scaled to multi-million-dollar growth. So that's been really fun. We've been building tons of great partnerships with other universities and schools. We do travel mainly for university teams, mainly swim. So that's kind of how I got into that. Now, to bring it full circle into how we got here, that same year, 2015, when I graduated school, I got really into acting. And I was like, oh, wow, I need to study acting. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And that actually came from a dream I had when I was a sophomore in college. I was in a mob flick with Leo and Robert De Niro. And I woke up like sweating on my 21st birthday. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, I got to be an actor. And it hit me. And right there and then I was like, all right, I got to study in Manhattan after Fordham, and bam, that's it. So long story short, I studied at the William Esper Studio in Manhattan from 2015 to 2017. And this is essentially where Homebase started, right? I'm from Westchester, 45 minutes outside the city. I need housing. I don't want to commute every single day to go to school in Manhattan. And I'm trying to get a place, but I don't make all the income requirements that I would need to make that happen in the city. Fresh out of school, working with my father. So I got shut out by quite a few landlords, and it was frustrating. And I had to commute for the first year and a half of school. It was terrible. So that's where that started. And then after school, I knew that I wanted to work in film, so I moved to California. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, I'm just going to move across the country and go live in California to work in film. Like, I'm really making a leap of faith here. Like, how do I find housing, right? So I stayed in an Airbnb month to month. It was a 3-month experiment, and I paid out the wazoo, right? It was like $1,800 a month, $2,000 a month to live in a 1-bedroom off the strip in Hollywood. So I'd be able to walk and not have to get a car while I'm out there to auditions and things like that. So I'm doing this, and I saved up, some money before I left, so I wouldn't have to really work. Besides working with my father, which I do remote, and I'm losing all my money. Like, I'm not making it as an actor. I'm not getting paid the salary that I thought I would be getting, and I can't live. I don't have the money to live. So what do I do after essentially like 8 months of living in the Airbnb and going through this? I found a co-living. I found this place called Podshare in Hollywood and Venice, and I'm like, wow, I can live in a bunk bed for $50 a night. And I can have a space where I can set up my computer and I can get my work done throughout the day and not be interrupted. Plus, there's other people in the same mindset that I am that are looking for an affordable option that are here trying to make it work, right? And I was like, I got to try this out. So I put everything in storage and I moved into Podshare and stayed there for about a week before I realized this is amazing. I need to build something like this that other people can have the experience that I'm having, because it was great. I was meeting people from all over the world that had such a unique story that we would just connect, whether it's in passing while I'm going to an audition, they're just coming in because they were out working their job, and now there's a connection at the door and we just have a moment. And it was such a touching experience that, like I said, within a week, I'm sitting in my bunk and I wrote, I think I wrote like a 32-page business plan about Homebase within 48 hours. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I'm
Wow.
building. Like, the only thing that I thought was really missing with Podshare was, how can I bring a wellness component in? Because for me, wellness is so important. When I was in college, I went through some mental health issues, a little bit of depression. I got really overweight. So that experience is really like 360 my life and made me be conscious of my mind, body, and spirit every single day, day in and day out. And I think I feel that it's so important. So I wanted to create an atmosphere that other people could continue to expand on their practice as well for better living, healthier living. So
Yeah.
kind of took all this and put it together, and that's where I came from.
Yeah. And to touch sort of on the last part, did you feel like that experience in Podshare co-living had some sort of positive effect on your emotional state? I think that's one of the things I've been exploring in previous episodes, is how basically co-living in some ways defeats loneliness, which is often a source of depression for a lot of people. And I've gone through, somewhat similar things. Do you feel like that at all?
100%. That for me, it was a healing, essentially,
Mm.
just by being there. And I think there's so much value for anybody that's feeling lonely or feeling down for having that experience, essentially like taking a leap of faith and having a place that they can call home. That's community.
Yeah. And we heard a similar story from Kaylin, who lived in Haven Co-Living, which is a place in Venice Beach. And it seems like Homebase is obviously inspired from your experiences and your parents. It's interesting how, both your parents contributed. One, your dad is the business side, and that's sort of what's driving Homebase, and as far as probably fundraising goes and business models and budgeting and all that sort of stuff. And then your mom, you said, is an artist and an actor. And so that's where like the creative part comes to it, right? How much are other co-living spaces inspired by Homebase? Because I think I see a lot of, obviously Podshare, like you mentioned, but also Haven, and then Upstart, which is basically a co-living space geared towards creatives with things like a recording studio, sort of a movie theater room, stuff like that. How much would you say comes from other co-living spaces?
I think a good portion. I think I tip my hat to Podshare, hands down. What they did, what they've done, what they're doing is commendable, and it's great. I think they have something going. So there's a lot of inspiration from there. The other places, yeah, 100%. It's more so those are categories of co-living, right? So having a music studio and having more amenities, those are things we want and we want to include in our model, especially targeting creatives. So I would say the biggest takeaways would be like the amenities, like you're saying, with Podshare. It's really like the style of living, the bunks, essentially they're pods that they call.
Mm.
That inspires our bunk a lot. That also inspires the base in the room. Other than that, I don't think, yeah, it's really the amenities that other people provide that we get inspiration from on a, when we're looking at
Yeah.
competitors.
And not to say that yours is based off theirs, because yours sounds completely unique, and especially done in New York. There's not a ton that are dedicated to health and wellness. There are some that are targeting creatives, but yours bringing all that together is unique. So I want to say that because it's obviously not copying it.
Well, I mean,
Go
good
ahead.
artists, steal, right? I mean,
Good
good
artist
artists
copy, great
copy,
artist
great
steal.
artists steal, right? So I think we're all a little guilty of stealing from other people's works of art. I think it's more of a hat tip than like, hey, we're copying you, right? It's more so like paying homage in a sense.
For sure. It's inspiration. It's not like you could replicate, or I could replicate Co-Living Circle across, so one of our other competitors, and just call it, basically the same thing and do everything else the exact same thing. There's obviously some differentiation, but like you said, it's a hat tip. It's inspiration.
Right.
So look, you're building this company right now, and it's a super interesting time because Rolling Stones did an article actually on co-living in the coronavirus sort of time right now, and they said co-living is the antithesis for social distancing. That was for some reason a mouthful. So there's a lot of co-living spaces taking a hit short term, but then Fox Business came out yesterday and said that co-living is a resilient asset class. What do you make of all this as far as how coronavirus is going to impact co-living and your plans with Homebase?
Sure. It's super interesting, right? Because we've all been sheltered in place and there's like a lack of social connection. And that's not good for anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the longest running Harvard study has said that human connection is responsible for human happiness. That's the the thing that we contribute to human happiness, right? Hands down. So we know that. And we can't be sitting in quarantine for so long and expect good to happen, right? So it's like I think that there's going to be almost like a pendulum shift, right? Like we've been out here for so long of like social quarantine that as soon as the gates open, as soon as we're allowed to go to parks, right, or like go on picnics or something like that, like the gates are just going to flood and people are just going to want social connection.
Yeah.
So how do I think it's going to affect things like the hospitality industry or restaurants, right? I think that they're going to prosper, right? I think that travel is going to come 360. I think people are going to want to get out. They're going to want to travel. And now, mind you, right, we have to do this in a strategic way. We can't just run out the gates 100%, and go nuts. We have to do this in a strategic manner and what's safe and what's healthy for everybody. But I do think that people are going to want to connect. Things like co-living are going to prosper because people are going to want that connection so much, and I think it's going to really help it out.
Yeah. I mean, for my friends who are living in a studio or one bedroom, this is terrible. This is so bad and lonely, and you can't see anybody. You can't, at least with co-living or having roommates, you have people you can be in close quarters with and see and have a face-to-face conversation. But if you're in a studio or one bedroom, like your eyes are open as to, like you're saying, like we need people for happiness. And a lot of people don't have that right now.
Yeah, it's rough. Think about if you're in a city like you're saying New York or San Francisco and you're in a studio or one bedroom by yourself. It's rough.
Yeah. Yeah, really is. Um, uh, that's all the questions I have anyway, Stephen. Is there anything else you want to share regarding Homebase or things in the co-living industry you're excited about?
Um, I guess be on the lookout for us, limhomebase.com. Check us out. We're still in stealth, so we're not marketing too much, but there will be some exciting announcements soon. So be on the lookout. Other than that, I think co-living's great. I really tip my hat, as we're saying, to all the other operators out there that are working towards this one unified goal of essentially solving loneliness, what we're saying. So I think it's great. And I
Yeah.
appreciate you having me on the show.
For sure. And so I do have one last question. On your
Yeah.
guys' website, there already saw a prototype of an app, which I think is awesome. I think that represents a huge opportunity in co-living. Is there's so much sharing that can be done among residents, even regarding different services. Talk about how the technology aspect goes into what you're building.
Great question. Uh, I couldn't agree more. I think using technology to facilitate things like buy, sell, and trade amongst the community members is going to be something that separates us. And that's how we're using technology in our model, essentially for a marketplace, for services and goods. So let's say you have a bike and you need your website done, right? And someone in the community is a website designer and you're looking to get off of that bike, right? You guys would be able to make that transaction happen through the app, and everything would be taken care of.
I love a trade like that. It's so random, but it's so perfect sometimes. You know what I mean? Like for some people, a website means so much to them, and for another person, they're like, I just need a bike for the next like couple days to go to an audition or whatever it is. Like co-living makes all that stuff super possible, which I mean, people just don't do that outside of like co-living, right?
Right, right. So we really want to use technology to bring the community onto the internet and allow people to connect when they're not inside of the physical space. Because, like you said, like sharing is part of the model. That's just so crucial to the model. So we feel that there's so many things people will want to put onto that marketplace,
Yeah.
and also currency. Right, that's one thing that we're working on and including in our app. Blockchain. We plan to create a tokenized reward system that members would also be able to use in the marketplace to buy, sell, and trade items. So that's a little bit of the future. Definitely not going to be in MVP or anytime soon, but I just wanted to throw that out there and saying that we feel that blockchain could be a solution to community exchanges.
Blockchain is a perfect place for this. And it's not always. Like a couple years ago, blockchain was sort of just like you put blockchain to something and you raise a ton of money, even if it doesn't make sense. But blockchain makes perfect sense here. So that is fascinating. Um,
We want everything to be transparent,
yeah,
right? So we feel that, yeah, we agree. We feel exactly. We feel blockchain would be great.
yeah. Well, cool. Thank you so much for joining me, Stephen. Everybody can go to livehomebase.com and we'll include Stephen's LinkedIn and you can contact him regarding signing up to be an early resident or a strategic business partner, anything else like that. Stephen, thanks for joining me, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Take care.
You too.